What's going on, everybody? Coach Austin here. Wow, what a weekend to say the least. For those who are going to be tuning in here, a couple of things. We're going to go over three big things here today. I'm going to keep it short and sweet on this live and talk about having game plans for your physique, overall travel, and how I can help give some guidance for the future. So one of the big ones is physique-based work when traveling is maintaining a protein intake and having the ability to purchase things when if you're at the airport or if you pack things in advance to help you get your goals. Second thing is handling travel chaos and making sure that, that we get overall focuses on game planning and making sure that things feel good in regard to your fat loss goals. And so what that comes down to is making sure that you are dialing things in as we continue to move forward. How do we do that? So planning ahead, having a game plan in regard to a lot of really cool things can help make a huge difference. So let's get into it here today, and let's make sure that we're focusing on a lot of these things. So first things first, getting into it is talking about the issues that happened this weekend. Basically, it felt like not necessarily Y2K, but felt like it for sure. But really talking about what happened during this experience. First things first is I did not go through as much as some people did. That's for sure. But really, when it comes down to how things went, we wanted to make sure that we kind of address some of these things so that people who are my clients, but also individuals who are looking for value in regard to fat loss, understand things that can help when traveling. Now let's get into it. First things first. Let's talk about travel. So having a game plan. Travel is stressful as hell. But it can be determined based on your mindset with travel how things are being effective, if that makes sense. So going into travel, what are some strategies you can do to help prepare yourself? So if you're traveling and you're trying to lose weight or trying to keep fat off, that can help. One is doing research ahead of time of where you're staying. So when you get to the location, is it walkable? Is the area walkable? Can you walk around, to a grocery store? Can you get to certain places? Things along those lines. If not, how can you get around? Talking about travel accommodations. Do you need an Uber? Do they have Turo, which is basically like rent a cab? Do they have all of these options available to you, and can you utilize them effectively? Do they have a public transit? What does that look like for you, really? Second thing is, if you're going to do fitness or exercise, talking with a coach ahead of time can talk about a game plan moving into it. For example, one of the big ones that I talk about, just making sure that people are prepared, is do you have a gym? Do you have, no gym accessibility? You're in the middle of nowhere. What does that look like for you? So in regard to airplane-based travel, for those who are in the United States specifically, having a goal of continuing your fat loss goals, one thing we know from evidence-based research is that your strength you don't just lose your gains if you've been exercising and then you decide for that week you're just going to maintain your steps or just cardio and stuff. That's the reality. So, but if you're trying to continue to progress, and let's say you travel frequently and you're like, hey, I just do this on a more regular basis, that's where you need to have a game plan moving in more. So ask yourself where you're at, ask yourself your goals, ask yourself how can we help. We have an app that does everything. You can get workouts anywhere. We work with a lot of people who travel and a lot of people who don't. Now, one thing they have all in common is focusing on physique goals so that you can get your nutrition dialed in. We can talk about strategies when you're in. Let's say you forgot to pack food and things go chaotically. You have a guide of protein resources at the airport, at most airports. Not everything is in all of the airports, but it gives you a general consensus of what to buy based on your goals. Second is utilizing travel more effectively. Like I asked earlier, is do you have a transportation to get places? Do you want to walk instead? Do you want to focus on that? That's where you need to ask yourself that. Working with your coach, getting that dialed in. The third thing is having a barcode scanner like MyFitnessPal, or we have our own app tracking software that barcode scans everything. That can dictate our calories, what is our goal, how do we work through that. For most people, you don't have to hit your macros perfectly when you're going through a travel day. You can focus on calories instead as the priority, and protein. And then when you get to your location, then jump back into it. Remember, guys, it's about finding sustainability. The last thing is the Delta issues that happened this weekend. Knowing the policy has been extremely helpful of what you can do. So just some education for you guys to take away is if you fly Delta, typically 3 hours or greater, and they don't get back to you customer service wise, that's where they need to be able to refund your ticket. So if you're listening to this and you didn't get refunded, you need to contact them, or at least save your receipt so that when they get all this crazy stuff figured out, they can get back to you. Second thing is they should give you a meal voucher, a hotel accommodation if your flight is canceled. We ended up having to game plan because we kind of felt like we needed to predict if this was a worst case scenario with getting canceled. I was stuck in Pittsburgh at a Masters National show for bodybuilding, and my flight just kept getting pushed back. So ended up just deciding to cancel, got refunded from Delta, and then went to a different airline. Now with that, there's some travel strategies that I recommend is having a travel credit card. There's like Capital One Venture X, Chase Sapphire. I'm not giving you financial guidance. I'm giving you just some things that I know based on the travel and situations I've run into. So some of those travel credit cards give you global entry if you're coming from outside the U.S. Into the U.S. and you're a U.S. citizen. You can get basically like think of Disneyland Fast Pass. The second thing is TSA PreCheck. Now everyone is getting TSA PreCheck, it feels like. So making sure that you have options, right? You can use Clear. That's a more expensive thing. But some of these travel credit cards cover both. So American Express, I believe, also does that as well. Third thing is, in the case of a scenario, what we like to do is we like to use points from the portal, depending on which card you use, to be able to say, hey, I can use points to help book a hotel in a case of emergency. Like saving enough points on will help with that. And then when it comes down to it is not booking through a third-party site so that if you have issues with the airline directly, you can get reimbursed. Or if you do go through a travel credit card, knowing that they are a travel credit card system that will reimburse you or has a good policy. So reading the fine print, kind of in regard to the cards I mentioned earlier, might be something to promote. I'm not affiliated with any of these companies, so just know that. This is not also travel advice. This is just recommendations, as I mentioned. The last thing here is knowing in advance, how to navigate airports can be effective. So knowing like different airlines have travel hubs. So United, American Airlines, Delta, they have travel hubs. So these are American-based, United States-based airlines. So if you get bumped around, you kind of know the strategy of what's going to be with that. Normally Delta, why, if possible, I could choose to book with them is because one, they can rebook your flight almost immediately. That didn't happen this last weekend. So know that every airline has to hold themselves accountable. And we've had issues with pretty much every airline. So us, meaning my wife and I, like just issues with all of those. So just knowing like how to navigate that, we've had to work through a lot of these challenges. One is we canceled the flight, got refunded, then booked with a different airline. So because Delta didn't book us on the next flight because we were going through Atlanta, which is still having issues. It's Wednesday. This was on Sunday. They're going to probably have issues up until this next weekend. And the federal government is looking into investigating the cases with this. So if you have been affected by it, make sure that you apply. There's not an application, but there's a report that you can submit to them. It's the Secretary of Travel. You can look into that as well. The other thing, and this is saving your receipts, for like making sure you have all that, because then you can send it to the airline to let them know like, hey, we need to be reimbursed. Because after 3 hours, especially with Delta's policy, we learned is you should have a flight rebooked. You should be able to have, if your flight is canceled and you need to stay the night, you should have a hotel voucher and meal voucher. So just know the meal vouchers are $12. I found that out as well. So just know that going into it is that it doesn't really cover a ton of stuff. So when it comes to getting protein in as a priority, I would highly recommend certain foods in that situation. And we have a protein guide if you look up on our website, or if you go to at fitwave.com, www.fitwave.com, or if you go to my Instagram at that Physique Coach or Fitwave Coaching on Instagram, we have these protein guides. We send them to you automatically for free. You don't have to pay for them because we want to prevent this shit from happening. Excuse my French. But that's what we want to make sure we have dialed in. Okay. Last couple things here to take away is with the Delta, American, and United hubs, they'll bounce you around to different airports. Knowing that in advance can make a difference. United, for example, because of where we travel out of, is Colorado. So United is a Delta hub, or United is a hub here. Delta is in Atlanta, Seattle. United also is in Chicago. American Airlines is in Dallas. Southwest got in trouble several years ago because they didn't have a hub. So they were, when it comes to winter flights, you just kind of be careful with Southwest because they're going to push you around. But the government is also looking into that. So these are things that you should be aware of when you are traveling. So, and one last thing is knowing, especially let's say Delta was working perfectly, they would typically rebook you and get you on the next flight. If you're with United or with American Airlines, make sure that you know, like, because there's certain hubs at certain locations, you can look to see if there's flights that can get you back home more efficiently, so that when you are talking to a representative, you already have a game plan working through it. So those are some things that I recommend with this weekend. I also recommend, like I said, getting nutrition education within, like, hey, how do I handle the situation? Looking at travel plans with, hey, do I have accommodations? And how do I have access to a gym or no gym, or what does that look like with goals? So those can keep you accountable. Your lifestyle shouldn't stop based on a travel cancellation. So you should be able to handle these situations in stride, knowing moving forward, we can help you out. So if you have questions about that, or